Hi, my name is Hannah Majewski. Welcome to my YouTube channel and welcome to my truth about the college admissions process. So, I know a lot of you guys are like, Hannah, this is not your normal content, because it's not. But I was on a phone call with one of my friends the other day, and he was asking me about the college admissions process and like everything that I did. And I told him everything, and he's like, Hannah, I feel so much calmer after this conversation. You need to make a YouTube video about this. And I was like, okay. I mean, I feel like it would help people because my college admissions process was not what the scary thing that teachers make it out to be. And so I'm gonna help you guys now. So this video will be split up into kind of like different sections. So I'm just gonna explain my specific circumstances at first, and then there will be a timeline for senior year, like the timeline that I followed. The process about finding the schools to apply to begin with, the Common App application, the essay, or I think it's labeled as the personal statement on Common App, and then some things specifically for music majors. I applied and was accepted to 6 nationally ranked public universities. I applied under music education. Right now, the school that I'm attending, which is the University of Delaware, it is labeled as instrumental music education, and that is my major. But there was also the added process of the audition because of that. So keep all of this in mind as I'm saying all this, just the fact that there was the application and then also the audition, both of which did end up going into my acceptance into these 6 schools. Okay, so the first thing that I really want to go over is the timeline of your kind of senior year. So what I followed was I did the Common App within the week of it coming out. So at the time of recording this, it's August 5th. It'll probably be whatever Sunday is next when this video comes out. So I did everything as soon as it came out for the Common App, except for my personal statement. My personal statement definitely took me the longest, but I still had it done by the end of September, I would say. And getting it done early was one of the best decisions I made. So that all happens in around August, right? School starts, for me at least, the end of August. So then at that point, I was starting to get into meetings with prospective professors of mine. So for me, obviously, it was a little bit easier because I just had to talk to the trumpet professors, but I do think that there's a lot to be said about talking to like department heads if you're going into a non-music major, about talking to, specific teachers that, maybe like researchers within the school. And I think that you would get the same effect from that. So all of that kind of happens around early to mid-fall. And then at that point, I made a personal deadline for myself. So if all of the college applications were due December 1st, they were due for me November 1st. Not because of anything that anybody else was telling me, but to have that deadline for myself to get everything out of the way. So then I could just focus on my audition process. So again, I finished all my applications. I think I ended up finishing them all by like mid-October, which was huge for me. And then I started to look at my audition pieces. I went into private lessons around the same time, like mid-October, November-ish, I think. And then I had my first audition December 3rd. So that was really, really early on. For the rest of the season is kind of, applying for scholarships, figuring out what works for you. I forgot to say this. I would like to say I did not apply into any honors colleges. So if you are looking for honors college advice, I will try and find some good videos and link them below for that. But me personally, just going into first year, I did not want to apply to any honors colleges. I am planning on applying as a current student for next year, but it just kind of wasn't something that I'm looking for. So obviously that will look slightly different. But then I received word from my schools starting mid-December. And then at that point, you were kind of able to start looking at the different schools and figuring out what each of them offers you. And at that point, it's just scholarship city. You kind of just ride it out until the end of your senior year. You make a decision by May 1st. And yeah, that's kind of the general timeline that I followed that made it easier for me. also to just do school. You are still a student while you're applying for colleges, and sometimes it's easy to forget about that, but in the end, you are still going to classes. You still want to try and have as much focus on your academics as possible. So getting everything done early also helps a lot with that. Okay, so the next section I want to talk about is kind of finding your schools that you want to apply to. So I know for me, my process was visiting campus for a lot of these and meeting with the professors over Zoom or in person. And like the main things that were super important to me were a community within the school, the size of the school. I didn't want to go to a super big campus, but I didn't want it to be super small either. I kind of wanted that nice, like, in the middle area where it feels small, but in reality, it's a big campus. And the best way that I can describe that is Delaware. Which is where I ended up committing. I don't know if I already said that in this video. But, so the schools, I had an original list of 10 schools. I thought it was 11, and then I keep on forgetting one. So this list is missing one. I don't know what it is. But I'm just going to say my original list was 10 schools. The 10 schools of which were the Hart School of Music, the University of Connecticut, the University of Delaware, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Penn State University, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, Westchester University, Slippery Rock University, the University of Michigan, and the Ohio State University. And this list of schools, I had meetings, or I sent emails to all of their professors, right? And then at that point, I had meetings with most of them. There were two schools that did not meet with their professors, and that was UNC Chapel Hill and IUP. And then for the schools that I toured Hart, UConn, Delaware, UNC, Penn State, Westchester, kind of, Slippery Rock, and Ohio State. I did not tour the University of Michigan or IUP. Basically, I got this list of 10 schools down to 6. So the 6 schools that I ended up actually following through with my application were UConn, Delaware, Penn State, Westchester, Slippery Rock, and Ohio State. And these 6 schools, the reason that I applied to them was because of the meetings that I had with the professors, because of the vibes on campus. I visited all these schools. I had to check that in my brain first. I visited all these schools and took a tour, whether it was guided or unguided. And each of these schools kind of had something stick out to me. So the thing that remained most important to me was being able to tell that there was a good relationship between myself and the trumpet professor, but also being able to figure out what the community was like at the school. If, it was if there was a professor that couldn't really attest to their students' happiness, then I was kind of I don't know how I feel about this. Food options were also very important to me. I looked them up before applying, but that's just because I don't eat meat. But this can be important for some people. And yeah, you need to just figure out what is important in your head. If you want to do a 4+1, making sure that your, prospective school has that. If you want to do, if you want to do research, then that's super important. Making sure that you're going to a highly ranked school in research, or at least that you're looking at it. Just whatever would benefit you in the best way for your degree. And sometimes it's hard to know what that is, but I would just go with your gut on it. There were a couple of feelings during my meetings with these professors where I was my gut is telling me this is not right. And, that was just kind of how the cookie crumbled. And you don't have to feel bad for not liking a school, but make sure that you keep your core values super, super prominent in your brain throughout this entire process. So I already talked about it a little bit, but the next part that I'm going to be talking about is the Common App, which is the common application. So almost every school that I applied to took this, except for Slippery Rock. Slippery Rock does not have a Common App, but there are some schools who prefer that you use their portal versus the Common App. And an example of this is Penn State. So I also want to say I don't really have a lot to say about the Common App. It's kind of straightforward, just a little bit tedious. Talk to your counselor, or I know I had like a special counselor because I was in art smart, and she had told me, she was like, Penn State prefers that you use their personal portal, but if you use the Common App, they will not penalize you. So it's just kind of good to know that stuff and, figure it out before you end up doing everything in the Common App, and then it's like, oh. So yeah, and then one thing that was super kind of unique was that on the Common App, Delaware was the school that did this, asked for an academic appraisal, which was basically a paragraph defending yourself for any poor grades that you might have had. And so, kind of figuring that stuff out beforehand, maybe jotting some, oh, this is kind of getting to the next section. The next section is about the essay. So this is gonna kind of just merge together. So I had a Google Doc with all of my achievements in high school, my leadership positions, what I did, my extracurriculars, that's the word. And then I also kept my personal statement on there. I kept my academic appraisal for Delaware, and having it all on one document was so useful because I was able to reuse my personal statement for, first of all, I think I used it for every single college I applied to. I used it for multiple scholarships. I also put the scholarship prompts on there because I knew that there were some scholarships that I could apply to while I was in college that would likely reuse similar prompts. Having this Google Doc is super helpful. But to actually dive into the essay a little bit, my essay, oh shoot, I meant to pull this up before I started recording. So give me 1 second. So for the actual essay, you want to make your essay something you can write about. I knew, looking at I don't know what the Common App prompts are this year, but I do know that I did not connect to any of them last year. I was like, these are awful. I can't write about any of these. So I ended up using the free write prompt essentially. This is a lot of talking, guys. So my personal statement was about this idea of I was comparing music education and being an educator to kind of being being somebody's hero and being a rock star to them. So that was kind of the idea that my essay was based around. So I'm going to give some lines for my own and then kind of elaborate on them a little bit. So my hook of my essay was, quote, "My parents always tell me that when I was 5, whenever anybody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would say I wanted to be a rock star. Now pursuing music education, I guess you can say that dream is being fulfilled." End quote. So my hook, I wanted to make it something that could be revisited at the end, which we'll get to, and I wanted to make it something that kind of planted thoughts in your brain. It's the first line and you're like, whoa, this is this feels big. And then it's the second line, you're like, oh, this is gonna be good. And that's kind of what you want your hook to do. You want people to keep reading it. Because a lot of the time, if the essay does not catch their attention in the first 2 lines, they just won't keep reading. And that's just kind of the truth of it. It's how most essays work in high school. It's the exact same thing. So then, I go on. Your personal statement on Common App will not be more than a page if you are using 12-point Arial font, right? And so I split mine up into 2 paragraphs. So this first paragraph, it has that hook, obviously. And then it's kind of laying out the background. So I know in my essay, I talked about the fact that I moved because of the military. I talked about, all these kind of different ideas. And so this first paragraph was kind of just talking about that, talking about how I started in band, talking about how I started with music, and then I introduced the idea of band directors make kids feel safe, which was kind of the leading point of my entire essay. So this was all very, very important, right? And then you want to make sure that between the two or 3 paragraphs, just between paragraphs, it's a nice transition. So the last line of my first paragraph was, quote, "This was the first time I had been invited to anything since I had moved." Now, next paragraph, "Going caroling with these other band kids made me realize band is where I belonged." So that's a good transition. Oh, end quote. So that's a good transition. And then my second paragraph was the more hard-hitting, this is what I've learned paragraph. You know, the first paragraph was my experience. The second paragraph was, this is how it affected me as a human fundamentally. This is the entire second paragraph of my essay. Going caroling with these other band kids made me realize band is where I belong. I started talking to my director and getting to know him, and every day since then I've been able to learn something either about life or music from him. He has constantly taught me how to balance being a musician and being human, and these lessons are some of the most valuable I've ever had. The story isn't over yet, though. My junior year, I joined the marching band. It was then that I started to truly understand the effect that a music educator can have on a student. I was the student who felt like a new light was shown on everything I had known about music prior. As a senior, I'm an assistant drum major for the marching band, and this experience has helped me see the other side of the effect firsthand. I can see the freshmen in the band just as scared as I was as a sophomore and be able to genuinely say, I know you because I was you. Without this relationship that my directors have fostered with me since 6th grade, I wouldn't be where I am today. So, starting now, this is kind of my outro. Through these past 7 years, I was able to look back and realize that I don't have an exceptional story to tell. I didn't find the cure to cancer or fly to the moon, but I do have a story worth telling for every military kid who has felt like they didn't belong anywhere. And now if you ask 17-year-old Hannah what she wants to be when she grows up, she would still say a rock star. So we get the revisiting of the intro in as the last sentence. We have, this kind of like realization where it's like, I know that you're reading a billion essays and there's not anything super exceptional about mine. I admit that within my essay. I'm like, I know that, I didn't do phenomenal things for the world, but there are people who know me because I've done these things. But I talk about this idea of once being in the position that now I am helping, and this is kind of the what I learned from it. And it's now I was that person who didn't know anything, didn't know anyone, didn't know what I was doing. And then I was able to become that person to guide a younger version of myself. And that was kind of I talk about writing to your strengths a lot. And that was me writing to my strengths. I knew I was being a drum major was one of the most influential experiences of my young life. And I was able to write to that and truly reflect it upon my own life. And that was kind of the pull of my essay. From all of the teachers, I had 4 teachers? Yeah, 4 teachers review my essay. I had 3 or 4 peers review my essay as well. And all of them were your learning section was the section of your essay. And I was like, yeah. So that's kind of my main rundown on the personal statement. And then this is the last part of the video, is directed specifically at music majors. So if you're not a music major, I hope you enjoyed watching. If you are a music major, hi! So, I can't believe I just did that. I'm really tired, guys. So, if you are a music major, hi, thank you for staying. I have so much respect for everyone auditioning, and that's not just because I did it. It is because I did it last year. It is not easy. It's not meant to be easy. But the main thing that I try and think about throughout all of my auditions is, to just make music. And also the fact that it's more of an interview than an audition. If it was a raw audition, then that wouldn't be super fair, especially if you're going to music ed. So if you're, going into music performance, then maybe it is more of just an audition. But they're also looking for somebody that is teachable. They're also looking for somebody that's personable. It's an interview, and you're also interviewing them. You don't want to be somewhere if on that first interview, it's not an instant, If you feel disconnect, it's likely actually disconnect. And, it's not easy, but you will get through it. For music majors, the next 4 years, you will be completely immersing yourself in music. So kind of prepare yourself for that a little bit. Brush up on your music theory. Get used to practicing all the time. This is also kind of me talking to myself. I struggle with it. But just kind of keeping your head up high and knowing what you're looking for is the most important thing. So yeah, I hope that this video helped. Obviously, you can like comment if you have any further questions. I am always like more than happy to provide support during this time because I know how difficult it is. So that is going to be it for this video. I know it was a lot of talking, but it is mainly to help the people who need the help and just kind of need the support. And thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will likely be band camp. Okay, bye bye. Oh, not bye bye vlog. Bye bye YouTube.